Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of our 2019 season here at Purgatory Ironworks. I am your host, Trenton, and I have a collared shirt on and my hair is combed, so continued proof that miracles do exist. This time around, we're going to be talking about something that's very important. Now, of course, as I've always said, there's nothing that is more blacksmithy than an anvil. And we're not going to be building an anvil today. We're actually going to be talking about holding that bad boy up. Now, in the book, we talk about different places you can go to get either anvils, anvil-shaped objects, or something to beat on that end of it. But very few people ever really address how to build a stand for that anvil, whether it be just a block of steel or a real good old anvil. So there's probably no more variability in any item than anvil stands. I mean, it goes just crazy from shop to shop. Some of them are built out of wood, some of them are constructed out of lumber, some of them are just stumps, some of them are made out of metal. Man, I have seen every contraption possible to hold up an anvil. But today, I want to show you guys how to build one pretty much off the shelf from a big box store and give you an idea of how to make one that's durable, it's going to last a long time, it's going to do the job well. Again, there are a couple of thousand different ways to be able to make a good stand for an anvil. In fact, this stand right here is made out of old pipe parts I got out of Tallahassee, Florida. Like big industrial cast pipe parts, bam, that's it right there. Works great, it'll be here long after I am dead. But for you guys that are just starting out, you may not have access to these unique parts, so making sure that you can kind of take a weekend, go into town and buy everything that you need is really kind of the onus for this video. So let's walk out here to the other portion of the shop. Let me show you the materials that you're going to need and we'll get to putting together our anvil stand. In order to build your anvil stand, you're going to need a couple things from the big box store, and the good news is you can get everything that you need for about 60 bucks. The vast majority of that money is going to be spent on the lumber itself, which is going to be a 2x12 by 16 foot board or some combination thereof. And you got to have a couple of bolts. So 60 bucks for an anvil stand, not terrible bad. Now, of course, you can piece it together with 2x4s and scrap lumber that you may find at your local construction site, but it's not going to be nearly as easy as what we're going to do here. So the idea for this was, of course, so that you could, without a whole bunch of finagling, go get what you need and get your stand built. So if you're not going to do it just like I am, no problem at all. Just use this as a guide for building your stand. So let's look at what you're going to need. First thing you're going to need is going to be 4 1/2-inch carriage bolts that are 12 inches long with the nut and the 2 washers for these. Of course, these are from the big box store. I think they end up being about $3 a piece. You're going to need some 16 penny or 3 1/2-inch long common bright nails. You're going to need a little bit of this stuff right here. This is known as hanger tape or holy tape. Get it? Holy tape. We're going to use this to strap our anvil down with, and of course you've got to have some 2x12. That's pretty much one of the biggest boards that they actually make. Now, there's one caveat in here, because when we make this piece, we want the dimensions to be close to 12 inches by 12 inches, which happens to be usually pretty much big enough for any anvil out there that you're going to find. So the anvil base will usually be close in there. But if you did some basic math, you say, well, if you want a 12 by 12 block and you've got 2-inch thick material, then you'd actually need 6 boards. Well, it's really not the case, because if you're familiar with lumber, when you buy a 2x4 or 2x12 or anything like that, it's not really 2 inches. It's actually 1.5 inches, because when it started at 2 inches, they planed it down and sanded it, so the actual measurement that you end up with is about 1.5 inches worth of thickness. So what we're going to have for this is not 6 boards, but we're going to have to add one, 7. Is what we're going to do with this particular build. You can add 8, but the problem is if you put 8 in there, you're going to have a real tough time getting your bolt through. So you're going to need actually 7 boards out of this 2x12 of whatever length it is to make your anvil the right height. What height is that? That is an excellent question. Let's go over here to my marking board and let me show you how to figure that out. So guys, finding out exactly what height your anvil needs to be at and resultingly exactly how long you need to cut your boards is pretty easy to do. It's pretty simple. It's easiest done with a friend. Grab a tape measure, and what you want to do is like the Das Ubersmith here, you want to stand straight up just like this with your hands at your side and make a fist with your hand. You want your friend to measure the distance between the ground and the top of your knuckle. That should be where the top of the anvil should be. So for me, that's about 35 inches because I'm a pretty tall guy. And then you need to measure the height of your anvil. The soda for anvil that we're going to be using is about 12 inches high. So anvil height. Very simply subtract anvil height from this measurement. And that means I need to cut all my boards 23 inches and 7 of them so that the bolts will actually fit through. That's it. That's how you figure out the height of your anvil. Now, there's going to be a lot of people, and me go and cut this off at the pass. There's a ton of people that talk about their anvils lower or higher than this and they get by just fine. Again, I stress there are tons of things that can make do, and this is more of a guideline. In general, the height of your anvil needs to be where your balled up fist knuckle is. It gives you the proper, it doesn't wear you out. If you have to work like this, it strains your muscles. If you have to bend over, it's going to strain things. So what you want to do, again, about knuckle height is a really good height. And for the purposes of making our anvil stand, that's what we're going to go with. So now what I'm going to need to do is actually get over here to the saw, cut up my 2x12, and get my pieces ready to go and rock and roll. So watch this. I have myself a big stack of 2x12s here, and they are all cut to size, and now we need to actually start marking for the bolt holes. Now, this can be made really easy if you have one of these guys right here, which is known as a tri-square. It's been set for 2 inches, because what I want to do is I want to mark that bolt hole 2 inches from each edge. For example, you can see here is our 2x12. I want to put a mark down here, 2 inches from here, and then 2 inches from here. Take this bad boy, zip, zip, zip. Boy, I got that the wrong way. And if you can see, there is my mark. And we're going to do that on all 4 corners of this board. Again, this makes it a little bit easier than having to take your tape measure and measure out 2 inches from everywhere. You want to be as precise as you possibly can with this, because here's the deal. We've got 7 different boards for that bolt to go through. When you are using a spade bit to drill through these, there's going to be a little bit of natural wobble that occurs when you're going through that board. So you'll get the first bolt through very easily, but unless those other holes are lined up very closely, it's not going to fit, and it's going to be a pain in the butt. So you want to make these measurements as close as you possibly can, and when you get ready to drill them, even though that these are 1/2 inch bolts, we're going to oversize those holes to give us a little bit of play and a little bit of slop in there so that we don't have anything bind up too bad. I'm going to use actually a 5/8 spade bit. If you really suck at measuring, you might want to jump that up to 3/4 to give yourself a lot of play in that end of things. And so we just need to mark all these out, and then we're going to go to the drill press to do this. Now, if you have access to a drill press, I highly recommend that you use a drill press on this. Again, because we're going through so many different layers, having these holes very nice and square and as close to the mark as original is going to be very critical. If not, you're going to be trying to use a sledgehammer to drive these bolts through. Believe me, it gets a little sideways faster than you'd imagine. But I'm going to take my tri-square here, go ahead and mark out the rest of these guys, and then we're going to go to our drill press with a 5/8 spade bit and drill our holes. Now, one thing just to show you that even the best of us sometimes have to make do, my drill press is actually set up for metal. This is not a high-speed setup for wood, so this is actually going to be turning a little bit slower than I want it to. And but we can make do with it. So what I'm going to do here, though, if you notice this guy right here, this is actually a drill clamp. So I'm going to line this guy up, and then I'm actually going to clamp it in place. This is very handy, and make sure I'm right there. And let's drill a couple holes. Again, this is a 5/8 bit for the 1/2 inch bolts that we're using. Now normally if I was doing this, I'd actually have a piece of wood on the back side to prevent the board from tearing out. This is some pretty roughshod work, so I'm not concerned with it. As long as we are able to get through it, we're good to go. I like that. And let's keep going here. Line it up, lock it in. And easy through the other side. Ba-bam. So we've got 24 more of these, actually 22 more of these bad boys to do. Excuse me, my math is off. 7 times 4 is 28. We now have 26 more of these holes to do. So give me just a few minutes, guys, and I'll get these drill out and we'll get ready to bolt this bad boy together. Got a pile of drill boards at this point and we are ready to go. Now, one of the great things about this is you can, right from here, you can take and put your bolts through, tighten this guy down, and it will work. However, in the shop, I like to really reinforce these guys. And that means that you can actually take your nails and as you stack them, drive nails through it to reinforce everything. Putting glue between that will turn this piece into pretty much a rock. However, if you're going to reinforce this stuff using glue or nails, make sure that you do a dry test fit. Even if you have a drill press and your holes are very accurate, it's very easy to get a little bit off, and more oftentimes than not, that little extra space from that 5/8 is just going to dry up completely when you start stacking these. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take, whoop, I'm going to drop that. We're going to take our bolts. Again, you want to put one washer to one side there. And what I'm going to do is with this bottom board, I'm going to put all 4 bolts on there and set that on the table. Move this one out of the way. You know, you'd think as much as I do this, I'd have all this done and waiting. But no, it's hot, there's gnats, and I'm not thinking right, and I'm not doing a great job of being a host. And yeah, the gnats are here. I done sucked up 2, getting my daily allowance of freaking protein in South Georgia. All right, there we are. You can see we've got all 4 bolts into place, and now what we want to do is come back in with our other boards and basically just start stacking. It's trickier than you would imagine. So there's 2. Oh, Joker. And there. 3. 4. Now, if you're wondering why this board looks so bad, it's because when I went to the store the other day, I only got a 2x12. And that means when I got out here to film this the first time, I didn't have enough board. So I had to go salvage a crappy board out of a buddy of mine that does some construction's scrap pile. So we got a couple of crappy ones here. I'm on you, Joker. Number 6. Ow, that got my finger. And number 7. Always the last one. All right, so we got close. Yeah, like a glove. So, even with that extra 1/8 of an inch in there, you can still see it can be a bit of a problem to fit all this. And the other thing that I want you to look at, let me turn this aside. You see how this is actually leaned out this way? This is bad. So once you get it test fit, you actually need to take your square and square this bad boy up, because if it's crooked out like that and you bolt it down, your anvil stand is going to be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So not good. But everything fits up pretty well on that end of it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take these boards back off. I don't think I'm actually going to nail this one, but I am going to glue the patootie out of it. So I'll come back down to the first board, grab my gallon of glue, and just make a sloppy mess. Okay guys, well, and one thing I want to stress is that you don't have to use glue to do this. This glue that I had has been sitting around for a little while. I want to use it up anyway, but I cannot overstate the holding power of glue. Any woodworker worth his salt will tell you that glue is superior to nails and bolts and everything else. So by adding the glue to this bad boy, it really toughens it up. But again, not necessary for what you're doing on that end. But we've got our stack up here now. And now what I'm going to do is actually take our nuts and washers that I have conveniently buried under my stack, and we're going to start tightening this guy down. Aha! I got one more. Where are you? Of course, there's always one. There she is. Tell I ain't been filming in a while. Okay. Now you can see if we had actually gone with 8, it would have been a little too much for these 12-inch bolts, and the 12 inches are pretty much the longest one that you can get in the big box store. But remember what I said, this can get off, so you want to use a framing square or something else to try to get this as lined up and square as possible. You don't want it too far out. A couple of quick checks. Everything means that we are close enough for government work. We'll use our wrench here and we will start tightening stuff down. And again, what you want to do is you just don't want to tighten one all the way down. You want to kind of snug them in order, just like you're doing a tire. Now, depending on where you buy your lumber and how recently they got it, sometimes this lumber will be quite wet. You can squeeze water out of it. You scared the crap out of me. Drop anything. Perils of having cats. Anyway, the wood can be quite wet, and you'll actually squeeze water out of this thing as you tighten it. Shouldn't be a problem. Just after it dries out, after a couple of weeks, you'll want to go back and retighten these. Alright, that's pretty it's pretty freaking solid, and you can see that the pressure is actually causing the glue to squeeze out from in between, which is exactly what we want. Now if you want to get nuts and actually put 6 bolts through there, you certainly can, but 4 is usually more than sufficient for what we're doing. So let's stand this joker up. Make sure all our stuff's out from under it here. And that sits pretty fairly level. We got a good level top. And so now we have an excellent base for the anvil. So that in a nutshell is it. That is now a super solid block of wood. Since it's on the end grain, it's not going to tear up, it's not going to split. And we've got a good solid surface to put an anvil on. And so what I'm going to do now is actually get my Sodafers anvil, which is one I put a new paint job on a while back. And when we actually photographed this for the book, we did it on a much smaller one of these because the young lady that was helping me, who is also our illustrator, is kind of a midget. And so her anvil is really, really low. We used that anvil in the shop, and the problem is it's kind of our secondary anvil over here, and we're all getting back pain from having to stoop over, so we need an extra one anyway. So now I'm going to show you how to lock your anvil down to the top of this bad boy. All right. So we've got our piece here, we're looking good, and I'm just going to move my anvil over here to this block, and I'm going to show you how we're going to lock it down here. Now, there are about a gazillion different ways to lock an anvil to a stump. I'm just going to show you one that's quick and effective, and we'll get you by. So let me eat the Wheaties here. All right, nobody look, I got to pull up my britches. Okay. All right, so now our anvil is in place, and we need a way to strap this bad boy down, and that's where our holy tape is going to come into play, and that's this stuff right here. And we're going to need 2 strips of it along with a pair of snips to cut it. And pretty simply, what we're going to do is we're going to strap this anvil across the front and across the back. Let me show you what I mean. Let's quickly measure this out. You know, this stuff, this tape, this metal tape is actually quite inexpensive. So don't be shy with it. There's probably nothing else you'll use this for. And now that I kind of measured it, I'll even it up on both sides. Just pick me a spot right here in the front, and nail this joker in. There's one, and we're going to do the same thing on the back side. And you want to try to get this as tight as you can just by hand. You know, pull it taut, make sure that there's no obvious, you know, loops or anything in there that's going to give you too much slack. Back side. Okay, there's that one, and let's go for the back side here. Again, measure this out. Give yourself plenty of slack. This stuff is cheap. And to the back side. Again, give it a good tug. Tighten it in as much as you can. Alright, so now you have this guy halfway trapped, but you can see there's still slack in here, and there still can be a good bit of movement in the anvil itself, and this is where we have a really cool trick that we're going to use to tighten this up. So to tighten this guy down, what we're going to do is we're going to select one of these holes right here, kind of right between the leg of our anvil and the base here. We'll drop it in like this, get into a board really good, make sure we got plenty of area for the hammer to get in there. And what's going to happen is as we drive this nail, it's going to grab that strap and pull it really taut. See that? Now there is absolutely no slack, and you see this bad boy is now locked down to the anvil. It did pull some slack down here, so you can simply come back in with some other nails and lock that down. I normally do this on both sides, so grab one there. Woo! Actually, that is banjo tight already. So I'm just going to clean up that front side a little bit. Drop an extra nail or two in that just to have it look good. And guys, she ain't going anywhere. And there you have it, amigos. One anvil stand locked down very firmly. Now, one of the other nice things about the straps is the straps actually help draw a little bit of that ring out of there. Because normally if that was just sitting on wood, it'd be deafening your ears. But straps help a little bit of that. Of course, you can wrap a chain around it to really take the ring out of it. But guys, that is a really tough stand. You're not going to tear this thing up. Of course, it lends itself to being decorated however you want to. You can come back in. What'd you say, Kitty? What'd you say? Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're in for a treat now. Come on. Come on. Everybody's waiting. Come on. Ain't everybody got all day. Come on. Come on, get up here. Time for your treatment. Anyway, so you can end up actually decorate this thing. You can burn it with a torch. You can carve it like we did the one in the book. But it's a very simple way and pretty inexpensive. I remember that when I first got started, trying to find an anvil stump was really tough. You could find stumps, but then you'd have to have somebody with a chainsaw to cut it flat so that it would sit even. It was just a nightmare. So this is an excellent alternative, an excellent solution. And like I said, guys, you saw it right here. As always, this comes straight out of the book, Trenton's Guide to Love, Riches, and Blacksmithing, available on TrentonTie.com, along with our awesome hammers. And also, if you were paying very close attention in the corner of my board, you saw a gentleman by the name of Jeff McCready, who is in fact a hammer making god, was the gentleman that actually helped me get our hammers going. So if you look Jeff McCready up on Facebook, you can see some of his awesome work. But outside of that, guys, thank all of you for watching. Thank you for supporting Purgatory Ironworks and me. It means a lot, and means a lot to me and to the Keys. So thank you guys very much, and we'll see you next time right here at Purgatory Ironworks.